Okay, I think we can get started. So, welcome to Agile Metrics. I have the pleasure of introducing Don McGrail, VP of Training Solutions and author of the best-selling book, The Professional Product Owner. Without further ado, Mr. Don McGrail.
Well, thank you, Cooper. I am sharing my screen there, so hopefully that's visible. All right, thanks a lot, everyone. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I've been, I spent a lot of time as a product owner and kind of started realizing a lot of the things we were measuring in Scrum weren't quite what our customers cared about. And so I'd say 10 or so years ago, we started working a little bit more on delivering better metrics or better ways of showing value. And from that, and all the challenges of trying to get there, I've kind of compiled a few things that we'll talk about here. Now, I call this Agile metrics, and I put in for value and flow. So value is, are we building the right thing? Is this of any value to our customers, regardless of how well we're building it? Is anybody caring about it? And then flow, are we doing this as effectively or efficiently as possible as well? So those are the two key things we're going to focus on today. If you have any questions along the way, I'm going to be pausing. So please put them in the chat. I know Cooper will be monitoring those. I'll pause throughout and just see if I can get those answered. Likely, hopefully, there's too many questions to answer in this talk. If you have any, if you want to continue the conversation afterwards, my information's up here. You can email me, LinkedIn, tweet, whatever. I'm happy to keep the conversation going afterwards. I do have a book, The Professional Product Owner. This is one that kind of talks a little bit about the journey I was on as a product owner from when I started as an analyst, kind of like collecting requirements for people to focus a little bit more on return on investment and value and the customer. And so the key things I focus on in there are vision, value, and validation, the 3 Vs. So vision, something, why are we building this thing? Whose lives are changing by the work that we're doing, hopefully for the better. Value, which is the topic of this talk. And then validation, how do we know that when we're building this, it's the right thing? What sorts of experiments and tests can we do along the way? So there's a chapter of each of those in the book, but this is going to be focused a lot on that, the middle V, value. A little bit about improving. So I lead the training side of things and also coaching with a lot of customers. I've been with Improving since there's 12 of us back in 2007. I live in Dallas here, where is our headquarters, but now we've expanded over the years. I think we're over 1,700. I can't keep track anymore. People across 3 countries. These are all the things that we work in. My focus is a lot on the training and coaching side right here. And then here's a little bit of the history from 2006 to now. I'm not going to read all that to you. Check out our website for more. So let's get started. What do we want to measure? So I like kind of starting with this example. So imagine we all work for a pizza company. It's a pizza chain, a small chain. It's got maybe 6 or 7 stores across the city. But what we all work for the delivery organization. So we are the ones that care about getting the pizzas out to the customers as effectively as possible. We're the delivery drivers, the makers of the pizza, the managers of those people, trying to get those things out into our customers' hands. That's our focus. So I want you thinking, in this case, what sorts of metrics would you care about? I wish we could have a conversation here, but I'm sure people are starting to think along the lines of what I have here. Things like pizzas delivered per trip, how much time it takes to take an order, how much time it takes to get them out and back, how far we go, how much fuel we use, how accurate it is, route efficiency to make sure we're following the plans we've put in place. These are the sorts of things that would make sense to measure, right? Now, with that hat on, we quickly go to these sorts of metrics, and they make total sense for us. But if I just ask you to switch hats if we're not the ones in charge of delivery, we're the owners of this pizza chain. Now, what things would make sense to us? What would we want to measure in this case? I'll give you a moment to think about it. And I'm sure somebody just said things like revenue, make sure we're making some money, and our costs and customer satisfaction, repeat customers. Repeat customers would be important as an owner to see, hey, are they coming back to us? Because then if we can just expand and our repeat customers are getting higher and higher, that's a great sign for the future. Whereas the delivery organization that doesn't really matter as much to them. Employee satisfaction, so that we can lower costs with attrition and stuff like that. Growth. What about market drivers and trends? Do we need to start offering some gluten-free pizza or vegan pizza or all that stuff? And what about market share? Like, even though all the other numbers like revenue is going down, but if we are still gaining market share, maybe it's because economy is going down or competition is going out of business. When it comes back up, maybe we're good again. Again, these things may not be as concerning to the delivery side, but they are to the owner side. So maybe you see the picture I'm trying to paint here is that when we gather metrics, a lot of it has to do with our context. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to use the term, these are like this is circumstantial evidence of value. It doesn't mean we have value. All of these on the left could be trending in the right way. Like, we could be record time for delivery and miles per user, maximize fuel usage, accurate orders every time. Does it mean we're successful as a pizza chain? Not necessarily. It's circumstantial at best. It's circumstantial evidence of success. This is like, I'm borrowing this from the legal side of things, right? Circumstantial evidence. Maybe, yes, I can admit those are my fingerprints on the weapon. Does that mean I did it? Circumstantial, but you found the video? Direct, right? Although now with like deep fakes and stuff, even that could be circumstantial. But direct side of things is what we want to focus a little bit more on. Anyways, so that's kind of where we're going at, is what are some of those more direct ones. So let's switch over from pizza to product development. Software, but it doesn't have to be software. We're building products. It's the same sort of thing. We have a delivery organization, right? In that delivery organization, what sorts of things do we often measure? And this is something I use all the time with clients. Like, countless times I've gone onto a whiteboard and said, all right, what sorts of things are you guys measuring today on the delivery side? And the things I get are velocity, our test coverage, how defects, the complexity of the code, how scope is changing, time and budget sometimes. I've seen things often like say-do ratios, plan do. Are we completing the things we said we would? Stuff like, are we following the processes that we put in place? These are, we should be measuring them, but they're not direct value metrics. They are circumstantial at best, just like in the pizza analogy. So if we were to switch over from product development, if we came up with some generic ones, and we're going to get into later, each product will probably have a subset of owner type metrics that they care about. But if you can think generically for most products, there's a revenue component, there's an investment component, satisfaction, customer cycle time, how long it takes for us to get something done, how much of what we're doing is innovation as opposed to maintenance, right? That's the innovation rate. What are the customers even using? Are they even using what we're building out there? So again, we put on different hats, we get a whole new set of metrics. So we're going to dig into more of the ones on the right. These are more conducive to value, because that's what our owners, our stakeholders care about. It's not that we shouldn't measure the things on the left. In fact, what I like to refer to the things on the left as are cockpit metrics. So imagine in a plane, right? If you've ever looked at a cockpit and all the data that they have, who's that for? It's for the people in the cockpit. It's for the pilots, so that they can inspect and adapt and make adjustments along the way. So when they're looking at this stuff and there's barometric pressure and altitude and hydraulic fluids, and I don't know much about planes, I'm just making stuff up, but there's all this stuff that's really just for them. Their customers in the plane, the passengers, care about different metrics than they do. And maybe their stakeholders on the ground, like the airline stuff, they care about different ones. Like, are we using fuel efficiently? Are we using too much fuel? Stuff that the customers don't care about. And the pilots not directly in order to fly. But it's still a valid thing that we should be measuring. So what we'd be looking at here is this is stuff that we should have, but let's keep it in the cockpit. The moment we start using the things on the left as a measure of productivity of the team, of how well the team is doing in their performance, then you might as well, like, those dials in that cockpit are broken at that point. So these are good if it's just there for the people in the cockpit. In this case, in product development, I'm talking about the team. So hopefully that makes sense on here. I like to throw other ones out here. Like one I like to throw out there is lines of code, just to see everybody's reaction, because many in software have seen the metric of lines of code or lines of code per person or whatever, and they usually recoil. And I like to push on that one, because why? Why is that a bad metric? Generally, people are recoiling because they realize that lines of code is not an accurate measure of how well the team is doing. But isn't it something we should be measuring in the cockpit? As long as it's just for the team, isn't lines of code important? Like, if we do something in a sprint, and if we're using Scrum, and we did a lot of like refactoring and work down our technical debt, don't we want to be looking at lines of code to see if it got less or maybe higher? What if it doubled? Isn't that like an alarm that should go off for the team, not for the stakeholders? So as long as they're in the cockpit, that's fine. The rest of this talk, we're going to be focusing more on the things on the right. So something that I would like to refer to. So this is a book that I read quite a few years ago, like 5-6 years ago, and I found it related so well to this work I was doing from a metric standpoint, right? From a value perspective. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Great book about like actually getting things done. Like having ideas is one thing, but creating movement is another. And so they introduced these 4 disciplines of execution. And then I have decided to kind of go follow these 4 things for the rest of this talk. And we'll get into them a little bit more here. So the first one is focus on what they call a WIG, a wildly important goal. So we'll get into what that is and why that's important. Act on lead measures as opposed to lag. By the time you read the lagging metrics, it's likely too late. So what are some lead metrics we can use along the way? Keep a compelling scoreboard. Like think of like at a game, you've got something that the whole team can focus on in order to win. And then finally create a cadence of accountability. Honestly, probably one of the toughest ones out there is just the rhythm and the discipline to come together, update these things, inspect them, and adapt. So we'll talk about these 4 coming up. But before I get into the next one, Cooper, are there any questions yet? Maybe it's a good time to pause.
Sure. So one question is, what value, if any, is there in circumstantial evidence?
I guess it's for the team, right? If it's up or down is not good or bad. It just is. So gather the things that they care about and get rid of the ones they don't. I find it goes negative value the moment somebody outside of the team cares about them and is starting to ask about them. So my strategy has been to show them something shinier, show them direct evidence. So if I'm not showing you anything else but circumstantial evidence, then that's what you're going to be asking for. So like if a passenger in the plane is like, hey, how's this flight going? And we're not gathering anything that they care about, like on time, safety, security, legroom, that kind of thing. And we sit and we go into the cockpit and say, hey, the passengers want to know how the flight's going. And the pilot's like, well, we lost hydraulic fluid in one of the engines, so we had to divert from engine number 1 to engine number 2. And because of that, we've dropped altitude 4,000. I'm making stuff up. I don't know about flights. But if they're explaining all the stuff that's happening, and now you find yourself explaining that back to the passengers, and that's all they have, they're kind of like, oh, okay, then I guess that's okay. Should I be worried? And then if they've got nothing else, an hour into the flight, they might ask again, hey, so how's that hydraulic fluid thing going again? And now they're in the cockpit. This is very similar to conversations I've had with customers when I start touting velocity and points. Is like, hey, we don't have anything of direct evidence to show you, but good news, velocity went up 5 points last sprint. You're welcome. And I find my customers going, oh, I guess that's a good thing. I don't feel happier, but is my stuff here now? No, but velocity's up. If that's all they have is the circumstantial evidence, like velocity, then that's what they'll ask for. Hey, how's that velocity thing going? So trying to come up with some of these other things that we're talking about here and showing that instead, and I'll show you a way of doing it later, it gets us to refocus them, right? Cool. Thanks, Cooper. Let's and keep the questions coming, guys. If there's I'll pause again in a little bit here. So let's talk about the first discipline of execution. This is focus on the WIG. This is exceptional execution starts with narrowing focus. So we have way too many things going on. We're trying to accomplish too many things simultaneously. Let's have a singular focus that is of value. So that's what the WIG is when it comes to the 4DX thing. They suggest a format that looks similar to this, from some baseline to a goal by a date. So this needs to be, it's a single measure of success. We only have one of these at a time. Sometimes that's hard, but that makes it even more important. What are we going to measure? What is the one thing that is our measure of success? It is quantifiable. So it's good we need to start with a baseline. We can't just say, well, we want to increase sales. If we increase it by 5%, will you be happy after spending $1 million building this thing? What is the right number? So where are we now? And then what's the business case of doing this? Where do we want to be and when? That gives us something to focus on. It gives us this scoreboard that we can be watching and seeing if we're winning or not. And if we're not, what do we do about it? It needs to be time bound as well. The suggestion here is it shouldn't be more than a year. If I'm using this in software development, I think 6 months is about right, or less. Even a year, things can be completely different in 6 months. So but create some sort of time bound with it. That's important for other reasons, like we'll see in a sec. This is not a vision. So at first I was thinking, well, isn't this like a vision? But the vision should be bigger, aspirational, years down the road. It may not even be achievable, but it's something to, like, we want to be the best in the world at something. We want to eradicate hunger across the world, like awesome things like that inspire, but not necessarily measurable. It's the journey towards the vision that's important. So this is different than a vision. It's shorter and it's more measurable. It's something that provides us focus. And if you're using Scrum has this thing called a product goal. This is what I use as the product goal. Scrum as a framework doesn't suggest any sort of template or whatever. It says, but you should have a product goal, one product goal, it says. And then you work towards fulfilling that product goal. That's the measure of success. So if you are using Scrum, consider using this sort of thing. Use the WIG as your product goal here. So an example, or another thing actually to look at here is OKRs is pretty popular these days, but all it is just another way of doing what we're talking about here. If you find that one measure isn't enough, because it's a bit more nuanced than just a statement like what we have here, you could use this OKR format, which essentially is the objective, like in this example here, is to improve customer satisfaction by the end of the year. So it is also time bound. OKR should be time bound. But then we've got more than one way of measuring that, because just one may not be good enough. So if it was increase, or how about reduce the number of inbound complaints by 50%? If that was the only thing we were focused on, well, we could just like shut off the ability to give complaints and achieve that. But we want it to be a bit more nuanced. So on top of that, our net promoter score, which is a standard way of measuring customer satisfaction, we want to go from 10, what it is now, to 40. And we want to be monitoring social media mentions. We want to go from 25 positive mentions per whatever to 40. From an OKR perspective, objectives are goals and intents. Key results are measurable milestones under these goals and intents. So this is the format we tend to use there. So like no more than 5 ways of measuring your objective. Those are the key results of an OKR. So that can be used as a product goal in Scrum or a WIG as well. Here's how I use it in practice. Imagine I've got a roadmap, and the first half of the year, so 6 months down the road, I've got a product goal. Here's, and this is like a WIG format. Lower number of so this is we've got an overall vision. Let's say we're an airline here. We want to be the best in the world at handling checked bags. The best in the world. It's a big problem right now. We want to be number 1. So that's that aspirational vision thing. I don't know if we'll get all the way there, but we got to improve, right? We got to be better than what we are today. But what are we going to do for the first 6 months? We have all sorts of goals that we can use. But what is our focus for the next 6 months? So maybe we choose something like, well, we want to lower the number of separated, apparently it's called separated bags. I learned this from my colleague. It's not lost. They know where the bag is. They know where you are. You're just not together. So they call them separated bags. So we want to lower the number of separated bags from like 7.6 per thousand checked bags to 5 by the end of the Q3. That's success. And that's not achievable unless we're releasing along the way, right? Like, how do we know we're even getting close to this without a release? So it encourages us to test the market, to push things out there, to see if we're nudging it, moving the needle in any way. The product backlog that we create to achieve this, doing those is not the measure of success. And that's the challenge I have today working with organizations, is we create this list of features and we become these feature factories, checking it off and go, we did the 100 things you wanted, we did it. But we're not focused on the real goal. In fact, you could argue doing half of the product backlog and achieving that goal is more successful than doing all of the product backlog, right? So the shift here is moving away from things done, things checked off a list, to something that's more connected here. And this will result in more releases because you can't change this unless you're actually putting stuff out. It's going to result in more testing, more experimentation, more changing of the backlog as you learn that the things you're doing may not be working or they are working. The backlog should be more fluid in order to achieve the goal. And then maybe as we near the end of the first half of the year, we should be looking at next potential goals in our roadmap. Hey, we also want to do things about complaints or reduce damage bags or how much money we're paying out to customers to say sorry. Which of these should we be incorporating for the next 6 months? And then I would regenerate a product backlog at that point. The other nice thing about this is a great way of reducing the amount of stuff in your backlog. Over and over again, I ask clients how many, I've heard up to like 3,000 things in a backlog. That's crazy. That's like 10 years of work if you're working if you're doing one item a day, which is crazy, a crazy clip. So this, if it doesn't have to do with this goal in the next 6 months, my advice is don't put it in the product backlog. Keep it high level goals in your roadmap. Next half, or maybe next year, we have a bunch of stuff we might try. We're not hiding it. We're not losing it. We're keeping track of them. And we refine this stuff and move things, shift things left. These are the things that will eventually, we will create a backlog for, or will find themselves in our product backlog. Not yet. So that's kind of what, we're using from a goal-based roadmap here. So this is the importance of that WIG. It gives us focus for our product backlog. It gets us releasing more, testing more, and creates more focus on that value. Makes sense? Any questions? Any other questions, Cooper?
Yeah, I have one. So devs tend to live on islands. How do you communicate the WIG to the dev team and get them behind the WIG?
Yeah, probably the number one, I get this question as a product owner all the time when we do product owner training, and how do I motivate my team? The number one thing I'm able to do is communicate the vision. This doesn't mean just write down some fancy vision and show it to them, or create some motivational poster and put it in the room. this means like knowing the vision doesn't mean knowing the words. It means knowing what impact we're making on other people's lives. So the more I can communicate that the work my team is doing is improving somebody's life, which is a true statement, right? If you think about all the work that you guys are doing on projects, as consultants, as employees, whatever, it's improving somebody's life. Then ask yourself, has your team ever met the people whose lives are being improved? That's the number one thing I'm able to do to get them out of that, but it's easy because I call it the vacuum, right? All the layers between the organizational objectives and the work we're doing day in and day out, it gets lost. It gets filled in with documentation and plans and stuff like that and HR stuff. But if I can move all that out and communicate a good vision and a way of measuring our progress toward the vision through a WIG or product goal, that's what I find the most beneficial. But more important than that is like walk them over and go, here's whose lives are being improved. If you're using Scrum, the sprint review is a good opportunity for this, but building those relationships, they want to do that. They feel the vision now. It's not just something written down. I worked for one of my first Scrum projects back in 2003 was for a big insurance company. We rewrote their claim system. And we got the opportunity to sit in and listen to calls for people who it's for auto and property loss. So they just damage to their home, break-in, a car accident. They're often are very, very scared and troubled. And we were listening in with the operators. The system we were building was for them. And we heard their struggle when the system would crash. And they had to ask this poor person who on the phone, who's panicked, was on the side of a road, and have to say after 8 minutes of the call, can you start again? The system crashed. So that was like, we couldn't wait to get back and fix it for them and get something out there, not wait for 8 months to go build something. I wanted to do something as quick as possible, give this person something to try. That's how I, hopefully that answers the question, but we got to find a way to pull them out. And I hope that metrics like this help, but it's more about that connection that we're trying to create. Find a way to do that. Cool. If there's others, I know just from a timing perspective, I'll pause again in a little bit, but let's talk about acting on lead measures now. So this is the second discipline of execution. The first one was a WIG, right? The wildly important goal, one of those. The second here is act on lead measures. Mobilize on what you can control. The things that are already, the lagging metrics, it's already too late. So what do I mean by this? The very popular example when talking about lead and lag is your health. This is a health analogy. So think about what measurable goals would you have for getting healthier? So I went to the doctor and I'm not getting the greatest news here. So they're saying that, I don't know, my blood pressure is too high, my weight's too high. This is true after COVID. Cholesterol, blood sugar, right? These are different measures of health. The thing is, though, with all of these, they're not actionable. Like there's nothing I can do today or tomorrow that can change any one of these directly. Maybe with weight, if I like chopped an arm off or something, I'd lose weight. But that's not the point. These are lagging metrics. So instead, what is the recommendation about focusing on things that you can act on today? So I assume you guys are thinking this and probably know the answer here. I think I just heard calories in, calories out. These are the things we're usually focusing on, right? I can change this today. I can choose today to eat less. I can choose today to exercise more, walk more, take more steps. This is what the advice is to focus not on the lagging indicators, but on the leading indicators. That's what we're trying to do here. So less lagging, more leading. And so what does that look like for us in product development in the Agile world here? And so that's where we're going to go to next. Was there another question, Cooper?
We have two questions. From Adam, I coach a lot of data and analytics teams that build dashboards to provide insights to the user. The user takes those insights and creates action from the data that they see. Leadership wants to attribute direct value in the increase in profit and revenue based on the dashboard. The issue I have is trying to prove that a dashboard increases sales for a particular product. How would you approach those conversations with leaders in order to ensure that value is being derived from a dashboard, but it's more than likely circumstantial until a product is created that actually does the action from the inside?
So this deserves a deeper conversation, I assume. But here's what I believe where this is heading, and if not, I can try again. But it's not always obvious for that lagging metrics are moving in the right direction based off of the work that we're doing, right? So yeah, I've lowered my calories and I'm exercising more. My weight's going down. Can I prove though it's because of that? It's actually kind of rare for you too, Abe, but it's going down and all the measures are. So I mean, a lot of this is a leap of faith. We're still achieving the goals, right? So in this situation, we've got this dashboard revenue. If revenue is going up the way they want it, do I need to prove that it's because of the work that we're doing? They're investing in order to achieve this, and they're achieving it. I think it takes some trust, maybe some faith here too. But and if it's going down, then we should probably be doing something else anyways, right? Because what we're doing, even if it is still good, isn't good enough to achieve the goal that we've set. I don't have to prove conclusively that what we're doing is creating that. As long as it's happening, then everybody's happy, right? That's how we're going to measure success. So I don't worry so much about being able to prove it. We're doing this with the hypothesis that if we did this, it would go up, and it did. Leave it at that.
We wanted to
on Cooper from that, just from a time perspective, but I'll pause in a little bit more if you want to hit the other one.
Sure.
Talking about this leading and lagging thing from our world, one of the things I'm going to point to is this great resource is EBM, Evidence-Based Management. More information, you can check out the URL there, scrum.org/EBM. Now, the idea behind this, it came from evidence-based medicine, which has been in place for a very long time. So my understanding of evidence-based medicine, I'm no medical expert here, but long time ago, I'm going to say 100 years ago or so, we were noticing an increase in deaths and severe problems with patients. And the correlation was weird because the correlation was more often with more senior doctors. More seasoned doctors were having more patients in trouble. The junior ones weren't. And when they looked into it, it was because the more seasoned ones who'd been around forever would do things like, oh, I've seen these symptoms 1,000 times. Here's a prescription, go do it. But they didn't actually do any tests. Whereas the more junior ones who weren't as confident would run the tests and only act based off of the tests. So this became a practice in the medical field that I don't care how certain you are or how seasoned you are, you always act upon evidence, not your experience. So this is known as evidence-based medicine. What if we took that same thinking to what we do, managing products? Let's not just do it based off of guesses. Let's create a hypothesis, move towards it. If it's if it's right, if our test plays out, great. If not, let's do something else. So they've divided this into 4 key value areas: unrealized values, current value, ability to innovate, and time to market. And if you draw this line, even though it doesn't talk about it, this is how I look at it. Right here, I look at the top as lagging and the bottom as leading. So there's a lot of different ways to measure these 4 things. But if you think unrealized value is the opportunity in the marketplace, there's all these people doing things manually out there. That's an opportunity we can take advantage of, right? It's the future, but it's lagging, right? Giving that to shift is a lagging metric. There's a lot of unhappy customers out there, right? What do we do about it? What about current value? This is like revenue, cost, things that we're doing today from our product and we're trying to get better at. We're trying to increase these, still lagging. On the bottom is the ability to innovate. How much are we spending on new things versus maintenance, old things here? This I'm saying as leading, because we can choose to shift that. This sprint, for using Scrum, we can spend more time on these bigger strategic items than the run-of-the-mill requests that we're getting from our customers over and over again about changing the wording and the color and all this stuff. Those complaints, which as a product owner, I used to get bogged down by but not able to make much progress on the strategic things. And what about time to market? We as I consider this leading, because we can choose to release more often. We can say this sprint, let's test the market. Maybe not to everybody, maybe to a small group or whatever, to manage risk. Let's do an experiment. Let's put out a proof of concept, like anything to get out there to test the market. That can affect my time to market ratio. So these on the bottom are my leading metrics. So I guess the way if you distill all this down, and I talk about the Agile world, you can really distill agility down to these things. Agile ultimately is about doing more innovative things more often. And if we can accomplish that, if we can get more innovative things to the marketplace more often, then we assert that we're going to get improvements on the lagging things. So if you get more calories out, less calories in, we assert your weight will go down, your blood pressure will get better. That's the goal, but we'll monitor and see if it's actually doing it. If not, we adjust. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, if you think about the Agile movement and even, like DevOps and AI/ML from an innovation side and DevOps from a time to market side, everything has to do with these two things. So we need to be measuring it. We need to get better at these two things. So how do we do that? Here are just some examples. I'm not going to read them all to you. You can go check them out at this website. I could do a whole talk just on EBM here. But if you take a look at unrealized value, this is the potential of the marketplace. Some examples there, current value, some examples there, ability to innovate, innovation rate, like what is the ratio of maintenance versus new things you're doing in a month, in a sprint, in a week, whatever. What can you do to adjust that or change? What about technical debt? The more time you're spending dealing with technical debt and defects and stuff like that, the less time you're spending on important, valuable things for the customer. So these things together are ways to measure your ability to innovate. Time to market. How many releases have you made in the last 3 months? Is one of my favorite. What can we do to get that higher? Once you say you're going to production, how long do you actually have to wait? If you're only releasing once every 6 months and everything that's been done before that just sits and waits, gathering dust, that's a very long release stabilization period. If you have a mandatory 1 month of UAT before a production release, that's also a longer release stabilization period. How quickly can you fix things? You'll have more ability to release if you're good at fixing. The moment you notice something, you can pull it back. That's mean time to repair. This is Amazon's, I think, top metric from what I understand. So these are the sorts of things. These are our leading metrics that we can leverage. Another set of leading metrics is flow. So when we talk about flow, we're talking about actively managing how efficient we are at getting things through the system. For core flow metrics, our cycle time, throughput, WIP, and age, work item age. So a little bit around that. Cycle time is the moment we start something to when we finish, how long is that? And over time, what that can do is it can give us an average where we can say something like, hey, on average, we get it done in this average, probably not the best way of saying it. Maybe you can get data to say at 85% of the time, our data shows that we're able to get this done in 12 days or less, a typical item that comes through the system. This would be considered like an SLE. We sometimes call it a service level expectation that based on our history for cycle time, 85% of the time it might go more, right? Well, we never say 100 because we just don't know, but we can show with our history, 85% we get done in this time. 50% of the time it gets done in 8 days or less. 85%, 12 days or less. This is real metrics. What about throughput? This may not be clear with my little arrow here, but throughput is essentially how many things got to production through, like at the end of the system or the exited the system in a given time span. You could be using sprints if you want. You could say how many items in a sprint or how many items in a week. This could be how you measure velocity, right? And no need for points, just how many items per period could be how we measure this. And then work in progress is on average, how much of this do we actually have? How many things are in our system and how much is too much? Because we know what happens when we have too much, right? These three things affect each other. The less work in progress, the lower the cycle time. We lower work in progress, the faster it's going to be to do something, right? And the higher throughput gets. The more work in progress, the longer it's going to take to do something. So all three affect each other. So we got to find our sweet spot there, what the right WIP limit is for the right cycle time and throughput. These together are known as Little's law. And so these are great, these are leading metrics because we can change them now. There are things we can do today to limit our work in progress, and then get things through the system quicker. Another good one I put in bold here is work item age, which studies show that if you have to do just one thing to improve flow, it's this. What's the oldest thing in the system? Work on that. No other, don't check anything else, just the oldest thing. So like if this one here is the oldest thing, that's what we do next. What do we pull in our daily scrum today? What's the oldest thing? That's what we're working on. What's the oldest thing in the backlog? Why is it just sitting there and keep getting pushed down? Do we need it? Get rid of it. If not, otherwise, let's get it done. Let's get it through the system. And that is seen as the best thing to improve flow of the system, is how old it is. One of the jokes is what you should do is put a banana peel on your items if you have them on a wall. And then the one that's oldest and stinkiest and rottenest, that's what we should be focused on as we go. So this was about leading metrics. We looked at things like innovation, time to market, and the flow metrics here from a leading side. If we could focus on that and then monitor our lagging metrics, our WIG would be a lagging metric, that starts to get us in the right direction. And something else to point out, you can also keep an eye on these as well, like ways to improve wait time. So when development's done, why is it sitting there? Like, what can we do to get it tested sooner? Or when we get things ready and it's just sitting around, why? Are we doing too much here? Or when we greenlight something, why is this wait? What are some things we can do to shorten these things? Once you set this up, you can do it. So obviously this is a Kanban thing. If you want to learn more about this, Kanban guide is a great place to go. It just lays it all out for you, what we mean when we talk about these flow metrics and Kanban in general. There's a lot of misconceptions with that. Again, I could do a whole talk just on that. All right. I am going. Yeah. Is there another question there, Cooper? Maybe we'll do one more and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we got a couple. We got 3 in the backlog of questions, but I'll go to the most the oldest one.
Let's pick one
Steven
of them.
had asked,
I'll save for the end if I have time.
Sure. So Steven had asked about the metrics, leading versus lagging. Yes, are many of the metrics on the left of the chart leading metrics, i.e. test coverage, as a leading metric of customer happiness?
Yeah, that's something people notice quite a bit, is when we compare it to what we talked about before in terms of the left-hand circumstantial versus the direct. Generally, the cockpit metrics are a little bit more leading, not always, right? Let me see if I can think of one. I guess code, like lines of code, we're wondering, I suppose that would be lagging, maybe, because we can't just change that. We can't just update it, although we could probably make a case to work it down. Code complexity, maybe, I guess we could start working on that a little bit, but generally, you're right, they're more leading. And generally the ones on the right are going to be more lagging, which is the challenge. So what I'm suggesting here is things like innovation and time to market are things that are on the right? A little bit, not all the way to the right, like some of the others, but there's still things that our customers and our stakeholders care about, and they're leading. So when you're looking at the things on the right, those are the things you can focus on, flow as well. So I like to think, like, if they're investing in this, and let's say they're investing in agility, and we told them about some of these metrics and how well they've gone over the time, what would they be happy about? Would they be happy about velocity going up? What does that mean to them? But would they be happy if we said we were able to double the amount of releases that we've been doing? And this is why it goes hand in hand with innovation. If our releases are nothing but bug fixes, patches, patch, they wouldn't be happy. That means it's just a pile of quality issues. But if it goes along with innovation, where we could say, we're releasing all the time, and the percentage of things we release are more innovative, things that you're making, that you are asking for, that are strategic. Those two things combined are key. So if you're not improving time to market and innovation is up, you could be working on the best, most important things ever, but you're not releasing it. So that's not valuable either. So both together are things people are willing to invest in. When we do agile adoptions, we might say, would you be happy if after the 6 months, you're releasing more often and more innovative things? That's worth the investment they're making in coaches and training and stuff like that. And as a product owner, that's the type of thing that we can, so it's on the more on the right-hand side and leading. But generally, you're right, lagging on the right, leading on the left. Keep a compelling scoreboard. So with this one, this is not a compelling scoreboard, just to make that case right now. But this is what I used to do back when I first started looking at this, where I would show amount of work done over time and scope changes. But then I realized this is not showing value. We could hit this perfectly and not deliver anything of value. So what I started to do was overlay things that I thought would be value, give them something shinier, right? Without taking this away that some of them have gotten used to through my own fault. But what if I overlaid something like sales? So I could start saying, hey, look, after this release, sales went up, but do I know it's because of that? Like the question before, I don't know for sure, right? But let's do another release to see what happens. So when we release again, it goes up again. All right, I'm feeling better about this bet. That the more we release, it seems like sales is going up. This is a good thing, but it doesn't tell the whole story, right? What did that cost us? Another metric that I believe all of you should be measuring is what the cost of all of this is. If you're using Scrum, Sprint is a great way of doing that. So this group here did 10 sprints. It was actually multiple teams, 10 sprints at 50,000 sprint. That's $500,000. Was this increase in sales worth $500,000? That's the conversation I want to be having more. So in a sprint review, rather than saying, is our velocity high enough? Are we going to do all the things and check all the boxes in our backlog? Now we're going to be saying, what was the original business case for this? Is this what we were hoping for? Is this increase in sales worth $500,000? Do we keep investing in this initiative? That's the conversation we should be having with the team, with our stakeholders. That's a value-focused, ROI-focused discussion, if that makes sense. So this is what I started to do more, is just put this stuff on top of it. You know, employee satisfaction could be another one. Why was there this dip after this release? Was this a hard release? Is this an early indicator of maybe attrition and costs to come? Like, these are the conversations I want to have more than points off of a backlog or a size of a backlog. Anyways, so I started doing that. And one of the things I noticed is whenever I had somebody from upper management in these sprint reviews, I noticed a bit of a trend. They wanted a dashboard. They'd asked for a dashboard. And I kind of blew it off for a while until I read the 4DX book, where it says the compelling dashboard thing, right? Create a compelling dashboard. So I set out to do it. And some of my inspiration was we'd have a lot of clients that have these big data centers, right? And a lot of times it was colored screens and graphs on a black background, and it showed their systems and how their servers and how it was running. And I'm thinking, after doing this work with metrics, shouldn't our products be like that too? Shouldn't we be monitoring our products the same way? So I kind of went and built something like this as a start that I use in most of the products I'm working on. So it might look like this, where all the things we've been talking about are here. There's my wig up top. There is still the circumstantial stuff because we still want to see it, right? This is the cockpit metrics, you know, velocity over time and defects and scope. It's there. But the majority of this is based off of value divided by leading and lagging indicators. So you'd see in leading my cost per iteration, time to market measured 3. You could consider this an OKR, right? My objective is to improve time to market. And my key results are increase the number of releases per quarter, reduce the amount of time it takes to release when we decide to release, and reduce cycle time. So I'm measuring all 3 here as an indication of how time to market's going. And then innovation, what percentage of my things are new versus maintenance? You could get more specific here, but keep it simple at first. You could have tech debt and defects and stuff like that, but just maintenance versus new. And then we start focusing on more, you know, what are some things we can do every sprint to do more maintenance or less maintenance, more features. So these 2 things we're measuring are leading things. If we can improve time to market and innovation, we hope the things on the right, the lagging metrics, will get better. There should be product revenue or costs. It's one or both. for every initiative you're on. It has something to do with both of these. So you should be measuring them. How about satisfaction, customer and employee satisfaction? Sometimes we'll put different types of customers in here. And then leaving some space as well for more specific things to your product. You know, at the call center for the insurance company, it was the amount of time spent on a call. We wanted to reduce that to make it more efficient. So that's something we would be measuring. You know, those sorts of things we would put in here: sales, process time, support calls, users, that kind of thing. So this is an example. This is just a spreadsheet that I use, that I just put online. And then the last one I'll go to, and hopefully I'll have a few minutes at the end here for some questions, is the cadence of accountability. So this is checking the score and updating the plan at regular intervals. And I'd probably say this is one of the toughest. In fact, you know, measuring these things, I don't find that difficult. Like, actually collecting the data isn't that hard. It's the discipline to actually come together and update something, to track it, I find is hard. So that's why this is so important, the cadence of accountability. The good news is and I think a lot of you are using Scrum, but it's not a mandatory thing for any of this. Scrum is like the perfect cadence of accountability. Can you think of anything better than Scrum as a rhythm of accountability, where every day we're checking the sprint goal, right? The sprint goal is how we're getting closer to the product goal. It should have some sort of business value. Every day in the daily Scrum is, what are we doing to get us closer to the sprint goal? How are we going to help get closer to the sprint goal? Again, it's not about checking the tasks off your sprint backlog. It's about achieving the sprint goal. Every sprint, how's the product goal? How are we doing towards the product goal? Is it going in the right direction? If not, what should we do about that? Do we need to shift? Do we need to abandon it? Every retrospective, you should be checking efficiency, maybe flow, right? How is our flow? Are there things we can do better here? Can we maybe lower how much we take on each sprint, right? That way we would get more throughput maybe. Let's try it. Let's do an experiment. What's our cycle time like? Are there things that have been sitting there forever that we're not dealing with? Those are the sorts of things that the Scrum team can focus on. Every time in sprint planning, we adjust toward a product goal. So what are some backlog items that make the most sense to get us towards this product goal? Are there new ones we should add? We should be, if we're focused not on the items in the backlog, but instead on the product goal, adding new ones and changing and getting rid of them is much easier to do. So this is our opportunity to adjust the direction of our product based on our product goal. So yeah, no better cadence than Scrum for this. So when I read 40X, I'm like, that's the one of the four I have, because I've been doing Scrum for a long time. I have a cadence of accountability. I set out to do the other ones, the WIG, focus on lead, and the compelling scoreboard or dashboard. And then the product owner, beyond Scrum, even update value measures regularly, not necessarily each sprint. I found that once I tried to do this every sprint, it got a bit crazy. Like some of my teams might want to do a 1 week sprint. I'm not going to go check revenue every week. It may not make sense in my context. Maybe once a month. So I have a group of people and stakeholders, some team members that get together once a month. We pull together some metrics. We update the dashboard separate from the sprints. It doesn't have to be on the same thing. So when it comes to a cadence of accountability, some notes here that I feel are important. I alluded to this at the beginning of this part. The hardest part is having the discipline to come together and update the measures regularly. The measuring itself is relatively easy. Like innovation, if you just go in and mark your things, if you're using a tool like Jira or whatever, label them as new or maintenance, and have it give you a report every sprint, every month about what ones were done, what's the percentage, the ratio based off of that. The other big mistake I make, is waiting too long to start. Like by the time we get all this up and running, we're 3-4 months in, and we don't have the data to show how far up the mountain we've come. So getting this baseline as soon as possible is important. When it comes to accountability, the other important thing here is people are more likely to commit to their own ideas, and so it can't just be pushing this on them. Engaging the whole team is important. Kind of like the question earlier, the more they are engaged with the customer and their needs and the vision, the more accountability they have, accountability that they want. So the goal should be commander's intent, to use a military term here, where we don't tell them what they need to do exactly. As long as they understand the goal, they let them figure this out, let them fail, let them experiment, let them be creative. Trust them to get the job done. So to wrap this up, Agile metrics can help. These are the main things, hopefully, you're getting out of this. Refocus on true business value, right? And because we get too weighted down by all these other circumstantial pieces on here. So it gets us refocusing to real business value. It's also a motivational thing. We have a shared objective. We're doing something together. We're all in the same boat. Managers shouldn't be have incentive to get things on time, on budget. That's not business value. While the customer wants something else, and the teams are looking at making sure their defects are at a lowest possible rate. Let's all get on the same page and have incentive around the exact same thing. It creates more accountability because we have this visibility. We have a scoreboard to watch to see how we're doing, and that creates accountability. Agile metrics allow us to focus more on lead measures like time to market, innovation, and flow. And then the other thing I don't think I talked about a whole lot is these can also guide your Agile adoption efforts. I've asked C-level folks, when they're beginning of an Agile adoption or whatever, how do you know this will be successful? And they've said, well, when everybody's trained, when 80% of our folks are trained in Scrum or SAFe or whatever. Is that really what the business wants out of this Agile adoption effort? Those tend to focus a lot on circumstantial measures as well. Training people, saying this as a trainer, is not value. It is circumstantial at best. More people trained, I would now hope we've got more alignment, more efficiencies, more understanding of the objectives, right? And more value to our customer. So that's another aspect of this, is like that exact same scoreboard I showed. We can use that when it comes to measuring the value of an Agile adoption investment, right? The return on that investment. All right, 1 minute left. Cooper, hopefully everybody, you got some value out of that. Again, like I said, if I don't get to your question, please reach out. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation afterwards. We maybe do one.
Yeah, Cheryl had asked, if one metric appears to be a measure of success, could adding another experiment and metric be added? Is there value in having an experiment for each quadrant of the EBM framework?
I guess. So I know we say there should still be one product goal. My worry with that is that we'll be too scattered, right? We're doing all of these at the same time. So I'd want to know why. Can we just try for one and then the other, then the other, then the other? But we can have an experiment as long as we have one overall goal. So I'd rather us do an experiment first to see, we think that this is going to have an effect on this one metric, but it might have an effect on this other metric. So why don't we just do an experiment now? Let's put out a proof of concept to see which one's more aligned, and then that can be our product goal, right? Because we don't know. So if we're still searching for what the right product goal is, I think maybe doing an experiment in the different key value areas, is what they call them in EBM, might be worth doing. If that's where you're going with that. I may not understand the complete question. But
sorry.
We're at the top of the hour here, but like I said, I do have, hopefully you can see I have passion around this stuff. I love to have these conversations. So if you want to connect with me, if you want to hop on a call to get through some of this, if you want a copy of that spreadsheet, I can make that happen too for the scoreboard. If you think it'd help, let me know. Thank you so much for spending your lunch with me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Next event is the high performance and what it teaches us about ORMs. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.